Hey, how's everyone doing on this beautiful Tuesday, July the 14th? If you're new here, welcome to Willa Candy's channel. And on this channel, I read my Holy Scripture. I share stories of my own. I also will share like other stories that I probably have heard of offline or news stories, etc. And how's everyone doing today? I hope everyone is doing great on this marvelous Tuesday. I hope everyone is out there driving safely, loving one another, treating everyone with respect, staying safe out there. Not drinking or anything like that. Hope everyone is doing great on this terrific day. It's a blessing to wake up and see another day. Can I get an amen? I'll be just reading the Bible in this video. I'll be reading the Bible, and I will also be sharing a story called In the Child's Heart. I don't know if I shared that story yet, but the story called In the Child's Heart takes place in Indiana in like the year of 1994. We're reading in Mark chapter 8. In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples unto him, and saith unto them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away fasting to their own houses, they will faint by the way, for divers of them came from far. And his disciples answered him, From whence can a man satisfy these men with bread here in the wilderness? And he asked them, How many loaves have ye? And they said, 7. And he commanded the people to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and gave thanks, and brake and gave to his disciples to set before them. And they did set them before the people. And they had a few small fishes, and he blessed and commanded to set them also before them. So they did eat and were filled. And they took up of the broken meat that was left 7 baskets. And they that had eaten were about 4,000. And he sent them away. And straightway he entered into a ship with his disciples, and came into the parts of Damanuta. And the Pharisees came forth and began to question with him, seeking of him a sign from heaven, tempting him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit, and saith, Why doth this generation seek after a sign? Verily I say unto you, there shall no sign be given unto this generation. And he left them, and entering into the ship again, departed to the other side. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread, neither had they in the ship with them more than 1 loaf. And he charged them, saying, Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, and of the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, It is because we have no bread. And when Jesus knew it, he saith unto them, Why reason ye because ye have no bread? Perceive ye not yet, neither understand, have ye your heart yet hardened? Having eyes, see ye not, and having ears, hear ye not, and do ye not remember? When I brake the 5 loaves among 5,000, how many baskets full of fragments took ye up? They say unto him, 12. And when the 7 among 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments took ye up? And they said, 7. And he said unto them, How is it that ye do not understand? And he cometh to Bethsaida, and they bring a blind man unto him, and besought him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand, and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes, and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught. And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. After that he put his hands again upon his eyes, and made him look up, and he was restored, and saw every man clearly. That's beautiful. And he sent him away to his house, saying, Neither go into the town, nor tell it to any in the town. He blessed him. He made a blind man see. See how powerful Jesus is. And Jesus went out, and his disciples, into the towns of Caesarea Philippi. And by the way he asked his disciples, saying unto them, Whom do men say that I am? And they answered, John the Baptist, but some say Elias, and others one of the prophets. And he saith unto them, But whom say ye that I am? And Peter answered and saith unto them, Thou art the Christ. And he charged them that they should tell no man of him. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders, and of the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, after 3 days rise again. And he spake that saying openly. And Peter took him and began to rebuke him. And when he had turned about and looked it on his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, Get thee behind me, Satan, for that you favorest not the things that be of God, but the things that be of men. And when he had called the people unto him, with his disciples also, he said unto them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake in the Gospels, the same shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Word of the day. Read about the Son of God and all the miracles that Jesus has done. Made a blind man see, fed a multitude. He was Jesus Christ. In this story called In a Child's Heart, it takes place, like I said, in Indiana, and it is 1994. I think I took place a lot of my stories in Indiana, but this story I did wrote a few years back when I was in high school, but I never officially made it into a book, thinking about it. But and I'm currently working on my second book too, but it's not published. But anywho, with this story called In a Child's Heart, it takes place in 1994. Hold on, I got the characters on it here. Sit you guys down. And my main character is Malika Brown, and she's like 14 years old, so she's like in the 8th grade. And her mother had passed away. Her mother's name was Michelle, and Michelle had passed away from cancer. She had passed away from terminal illness. That's all I can say. And Malika missed her mother dearly. Like, she hated that she had passed away. So she was left with her father, Maurice Brown. And Maurice was a terrific father, to her, took care of her the best way he could. But he later on in life ended up getting into a relationship with someone else. And in real life, Maurice and Malika's mother, Michelle, they wasn't that close, like that, like romantically close. They had their ups and downs. They fuss and fight a lot. And Malika's mother, Michelle, also, had a past with drugs. Like, she did drugs and stuff in the past, like before Malika was born. So it was a rough start. And Maurice, just fussed and fighted. They had a rocky relationship, but he did love Malika's mother. It's just Malika thinking in her 14-year-old mind that her dad don't give a care about her mother or what had happened to her mother. And her mother had passed away, like a year ago. I'll say like in late 1993, around in November or December, from a terminal illness for cancer. And a year later, in 1994, Malika is taking it hard. Malika is taking it hard. Like, she's taking it hard about her mother. Like, she misses her mother dearly. And her father knows this and tries all he can to, comfort Malika when he can comfort her. And when I say when he can comfort her, Maurice is a busy man. He, he has to go to work every day. He hardly stays home. He goes into work, comes in kind of late, leaves out with his suitcase, gives Malika a kiss on the forehead, and gives his new sweetheart a kiss on the lips after drinking some of the coffee that she makes for him. And his new sweetheart is Cynthia Gardner. Cynthia Gardner was the new love of his life, a woman that he would look at as the woman of his dreams. She was a nice, good-hearted woman, I would describe her as. A good-hearted woman that, loved Maurice just as much as he loved her. and she adored Malika. But Malika hated Cynthia. She hated Cynthia because Cynthia, of course, was not her mother. You know, like how it was with that show Moesha. You know, Frank, Mary, and Dee. Moesha was, probably not cool with it because, her and Miles, they lost their mother. And they ain't ready for a stepmother. And that's how it is with Malika Brown, with My Story in a Child's Heart. She was not ready for her for a stepmother. She wanted her original mother, but her original mother had passed away due to terminal illness. So like she wasn't happy. And Malika's mother, Michelle, was a beautiful woman. Cynthia is too, but she was a beautiful woman who lived a hard life. And Maurice loved her, but he didn't want to sit back and just mourn her death. He wanted it to move on with someone else. And Malika was not cool with that. So she did not respect Cynthia. Like it could be like mornings when she wake up and like Cynthia's in the kitchen, slavering over the stove. And let me just describe and tell about everyone in the story. Malika and Maurice, it used to be them and along with Malika's mother. They all used to have a house together, all three of them. But when Malika's mother died, Maurice had ended up moving in with his elderly parents, with his elderly dad. His dad's name is Samuel, but Malika would call him Grandpa Blue. A lot of people call him Grandpa Blue in the family. But Samuel is Maurice's mother. And Maurice, Samuel is Maurice's father, And Samuel was also in a relationship with this woman named Bessie Brown. They've been together for years. And not Bessie Brown, Ethel Brown. Ethel Brown is Samuel's wife. And they've been together for years. I'll say they've been together probably like around the time when Maurice's mother passed away, because his mother passed away as well. So Ethel is not Maurice's real mother. And Maurice moved in with his elderly dad after Michelle's passing. He moved away. He could not stay in the house that they all grew up in. The house where Malika, were born in and everything. Like he could not stay in that house, so he had to move in with his dad. His dad did not mind that his son, his grown son, was moving in with him along with Ethel. Because Maurice also took care of his, both of them because they were getting up there in age too. And Malika loved being around her grandfather too. He was just a lot of fun to be around. But Malika hated Cynthia. She hated that her dad was in a relationship with Cynthia. It was one night, Malika did not want to eat any dinner, because most of the time Cynthia is doing the cooking. Cynthia is doing the breakfast, the lunch, and the dinner. Like she's just cooking for everybody in the house. But sometimes it'll be Ethel too, because Ethel like to cook and bake cakes and stuff like that. Ethel would like to be in the kitchen helping Cynthia, and Cynthia loves that. Cynthia loves the bond with Maurice's parents, with Maurice's dad and Maurice's wife. But she likes to bond with Maurice's dad and Maurice's dad's wife. That's what I meant to say. But Malika on this night did not want to eat anything that Cynthia cooked. Like she was just sitting at the table while everybody was chit-chatting at the table. Cynthia, Maurice, Samuel, and Ethel, they were all chit-chatting at the table. She was sitting quietly in front of her plate of food like this. She did not want to eat her food. And Maurice had glanced it over, and like, why you not touching your food? This is some nice food that Cynthia cooked. And Malika had got up from her chair and said, "I ain't hungry." And she walked it straight to her room. And Cynthia said, "Well, it's all right. She don't have to eat it. She don't want to. The child is probably not hungry." Maurice said, "She keeps doing this every time. She don't never eat nothing that you cook." I'm going to have to talk to her about her behavior, because Maurice knows that his daughter does not like Cynthia, and he does all he can to get her close to Cynthia, but it just would not work. So Malika went straight to her room, slammed the door closed, and she hopped it in the bed and pulled out her diary and started writing in her diary. And like she just writing random stuff in her diary, stuff that had happened in school, what she did with her friends and stuff like that. Like she was just writing all sorts of stuff in her diary, like how little girls or teenagers did way back then or whatever. And she had two friends named Vanice Watson and Terrell Watson. They are siblings, by the way, brothers and sisters. But those are her two friends who she hangs around. And she wrote stuff about them. And after writing her a diary for some time, she ended up dozing off to sleep. She ended up putting her diary under her pillow with her pen and ended up falling asleep. And it was one late night around like near the end of 2 o'clock. She had woken up from the feeling of somebody stroking their fingers like through her hair. And Malika, she wore like these short pixie braids, and some of the braids is like beads and stuff, like like how the 90s girl style looked it with the pixie braids look. But she had like little beads and stuff in her, like decorations. And she woken up to somebody stroking her fingers in her hair. And she had opened up her eye, and then she ended up hearing a whisper like, Malika, Malika. And she ended up waking up, and guess who she saw standing right there in a beautiful white dress? It was her mother. Her mother looked like she had some type of glow around her. Like, like they call her Aura, A-U-R-A, I don't know. But it's like a type of glow around her. She had on like this beautiful white dress, like she in like a sleeping gown or something. And her hair was still flowing and long. Her hair was flowy and long. Her mom had beautiful long hair. And she would look it down at Malika. She was like, hey, baby. And she was rubbing her hand in Malika. And when she was rubbing her hand in Malika's hair. And Malika was like, Mama, is that you? And then, once she said that, that's when Michelle's apparition had started to back away from Malika's bed, like slowly walking away. And Malika was like, no, don't go. And she was getting out of bed and trying to, go after her mother's, try to go after her mother's apparition. But once she did that, she ended up walking all the way outside because the apparition was going outside, like leaving back outside. And the strange thing is, the front door was actually open, as if Malika's mother's spirit had opened up the door or something. But maybe, just maybe, the door was just left open. But Malika had ended up going outside, and her mother's spirit had ended up, disappearing. The mother was like, when she did that, the spirit disappeared. And Malika got sad. Like, she wanted her mother to stay there with her for good. But she know that she would never, N-E-V-E-R, never see her mother again. And that broke her heart. That hurted her. And the very next morning, she was sad about it. But, she had to rise and shine for school, stretch out in the bed and stuff. And she had to rise and shine for school. And she ended up, she had, after taking a bath, getting dressed and everything, and Malika also wears makeup. So while she was like making sure her hair was right and standing in front of the mirror putting on makeup, lipstick and stuff like that, eyeliner and eyelash, whatever, mascara, she was listening to some music. So she was like, like making sure her makeup was alright. And Cynthia had ended up stepping by the bathroom door while Malika was in there, like, Malika, I made some breakfast, honey. If you want some, it's in there. And Malika would just ignore her, like, ugh, like doing her makeup. Like, Malika just don't like Cynthia. And after finishing up with her makeup, Maurice was already in the kitchen. He was already in the kitchen, drinking on a cup of coffee and talking to Cynthia. And Cynthia, once she saw Malika coming at the table and seeing what she could eat or grab for breakfast, Cynthia was like, good morning, Malika. She said, good morning, Malika. Malika did not say a word. It just sounded like, and grabbing like for an apple. And Maurice said, didn't you hear her say, good morning? Maurice had said that. Like, didn't you hear her say good morning? And Malika was like, good morning, Cynthia. Like, she did not like Cynthia. And Cynthia had said, "You wanted some breakfast?" And then she was like, "No, I'll just consume this apple. This is good enough for me." And she bit in the apple. And Maurice said, "Well, I gotta go to work. I'm gonna finish up this coffee some other time." And then he ended up giving Cynthia a kiss on the lips. And he had told her like how great breakfast was, because he did get the taste of breakfast before he go to work. And then while he was putting up some more things in his suitcase, and then he had spoke to Malika. He had said, "Malika, I'm gonna let you know now that Cynthia is here to stay, and you got to show some respect to her. You understand me?" And Malika didn't say anything at first, so he ended up hitting the top of the table. "Do you understand me?" And Malika was like, yes, Daddy. Yes, sir." And that's when he was like, "All right, then. Now I got to go on to work. I love you." And he kissed her on the forehead and left. And Malika, once her dad had left, right around when her dad was leaving out the door, her friends had showed her. They're like, "Malika, you ready to go?" And then she was like, "Yeah, finally." And then she had grabbed her book, tossed the apple away in the trash. And Cynthia was like, "Well, have a great day at school." Malika left right out the door, did not say nothing to Cynthia still. Just like I said before, she does not like Cynthia at all. And when she arrived at school, she walking down the hallway with her friends and talking and just saying about how much she can't stand Cynthia. And Vanice was like, "I like Cynthia," because Vanice met Cynthia before. They're like, "Ain't nothing wrong with her. Has she been mean to you?" And Malika like, "No, I just don't like her. She thinks she's going to take the place of my mother. She would never be my mother. Like, she would never take the place." Like how some children who don't like their step-parents, what they'll say about their step-parent. "She will never take the place of my mother. I hate her. I don't like her. I don't like how Dad is, being so quick to, fall in love with her. He didn't give Mama a chance like that." And at school, not Cynthia, Malika was pretty popular. She was pretty popular. She had a lot of some people who would surround her and talk to her. And she was offered to be on the cheerleading team, but she just wasn't interested. But she did have, she was pretty known and pretty popular at the school. Malika Brown was. And in a classroom, while the teacher was teaching, she was sitting towards the front. She would always sit towards the front of the class. And she was kind of chatting it up with a few other kids, in front of the class, mostly girls. But she had no idea that it was this other kid towards the back of the classroom who was considered an outcast that nobody hardly talks to. And this other kid's name is Eddie Dobson. And Eddie Dobson was, just that one kid that everybody avoids, doesn't want to play with, that one kid who hardly has friends. Eddie Dobson is that type of kid. And he's also a little bit strange. I don't know, just strange kid that nobody wants to hang around and be around. That uncool kid. You know what I'm talking about. But, Eddie Dobson, he had a deep crush on Malika Brown. He loved it. He liked it, Malika, a lot. But was too shy to come up and say hey to her. So he had to figure out a way that he was able to, speak to her. And, sometimes Malika would catch him looking at her, but she would ignore it because, she used to some people staring at her. It don't bother her. And usually some people be bothered if you stare at them. But Malika was just the type who didn't let it bother. And he just had her eyes on her on that day. He just was looking at her. He was thinking in her mind like, man, I wish I could talk to her. She is so beautiful today. The makeup looks beautiful on her face. I just wish I could say something to her. And he ended up, when she was at her lockers, after class, he saw her standing by her lockers. He waited till everybody else that was around her left. Like she was speaking to a few girls, like, all right. And then when she was opening up her lockers looking for something, that's when Eddie had got an opportunity to come up. And Malika looked at him like, can I help you? And Eddie was like, hey, your name must be Malika. And she was like, yeah. she'll like, your name is Eddie. I seen you in my class, and then he'll like, yeah. Yeah, my name is Eddie. You know, it's nice to meet you. I just wanted to say hey. And Malika like, okay, hey, nice to meet you too. But when he walked it away, she was like, that's awkward. She was thinking that in her mind. And Eddie was like, okay, I spoke to her. You know, that's one step that I had took. That's what he was thinking in his mind. But he had a deep crush on her. He wanted to, speak to Malika at least. And she spoke back to him. So he thinking in her mind like, oh yeah, she likes me. She's in love with me. Started to build this strange connection in his mind when all Malika did was just being nice and spoke back to him. Yeah, but what really had burnt Malika up about her mother and about her father's relationship with Cynthia is when she went out of nowhere right after dinner on this night. Maurice dropped on one knee and proposed to Cynthia. He pulled out a ring. That burnt Malika up. Malika stood back, just seething, and had her arms folded like, just frowned up and mad. Like, I know he didn't just put a ring on her freaking finger when he didn't even thinking about proposing to my mother. That's what Malika was thinking in her mind. But Maurice proposed to Cynthia. Cynthia was like, oh my God, yes, yes. Put the ring on her finger. They both kissed each other. Samuel and Ethel thought it was beautiful. Like, wow, my boy is getting married. And Ethel's like, oh my God, that is so beautiful. It reminds me of when I had, when your father had proposed to me. That's what Ethel was saying. But Malika hated it. She hated it that her dad did something like that. She went straight outside to get some fresh air. And it was nighttime. And, Maurice ended up stepping outside, checking on her. Well, first it was Cynthia. That had stepped outside and checked in on her. And then she had said, we got dessert for tonight. We got some Hummingbird cake. And Malika was like, I don't want a cake. Like, she was mad. And Cynthia was like, well, is you all right? She said, I'm fine. Malika did not want to talk to Cynthia at all. So Cynthia was like, all right then. And she went back in the house. And that's when Maurice had went outside. Because, of course, Cynthia had went back to Maurice like, I think something is wrong with Malika. Maurice stepped outside and he talked to his daughter like, are you okay? And Malika was like, yeah, I'm fine, Daddy. They were like, are you sure? And they were like, she's like, yeah, I'm fine. And they were like, well, you ate a little bit of your food. And then she was like, yeah, I ate a little bit because I was a little bit hungry, but I'm all right. I don't want no dessert. I'm just out here getting some fresh air. I'm thinking about some things. And Maurice was like, let you know that everything will be all right. Okay, I promise everything will turn out great. You don't have to worry about anything. But Malika was just saying like, yeah, whatever. And Maurice had gave her a kiss on the forehead and walked it back in the house. But Malika stayed out there till it got a little bit late. She stayed out there to herself, just thinking about her mother. And she also glanced it up at the sky. And then she was like, Mother, I want to see you again. If you up there somewhere and you looking down at me, listening to me, I want to see you again. And that's what she had said before she went back in the house. She was thinking in her mind like everything is falling apart. Her dad is rushing into a relationship with Cynthia, and she don't like that at all. But Samuel and Ethel thought it was a beautiful thing. But what had made her end up growing close to Cynthia, is when something horrible or something I'm just saying something horrible and traumatic had ended up happening to Malika. She didn't lose her life, but it was traumatic. It was horrible. It had to do with the boy Eddie. And this boy named Eddie, he ended up telling Malika about this lost dog that he had lost. He was telling Malika about it. Heck, he even had a picture of his dog in his wallet that he carried on him. He showed it to her, And Malika was like, oh, it look like a cute dog. And we're like, yeah, he went missing. And I wish that somebody could help me, find him. But the truth about Eddie's dog, and he named his dog Rascal, by the way. Eddie's dog passed away like 3 years prior. The dog passed away. And he lied to this girl saying that he had lost his dog. He kept the old picture of his dog in his wallet. But this dog had passed away 3 years ago. So this dog is not around. He don't have the dog. But in his house, he still got the dog bowl. He still got the dog leash. He got everything that he remembers about this dog. So he clearly misses this dog. And Eddie stays with his with family of his. That's all I can say, at his family's house. But when him and Malika had showed up there, because him and Malika, they were walking through the woods for nothing. They were walking through the woods for nothing, looking for this dog. And Eddie was looking around like, well, maybe he ran off farther somewhere. It would be impossible to find him. And Malika was like, yes, it's hot out here too, because it was hot, scorching hot, probably hotter than it is out here today. It was hot, where they was at, and they was in the woods. And Malika would wipe her forehead like, yeah, it is hot out here. And Eddie was like, how about you come over to my place? We can, drink some fruit punch. And Malika was like, I don't know about that. And Eddie was like, yeah, I'm just, being friendly. Want to offer you a drink. And yeah, so you want me standing out here in the sun, because I don't think I'll be able to find Rascal. He probably ran really far off somewhere. And Malika was like, well, yeah, sure, I would like a cold drink. So Malika went on with Eddie, which she shouldn't have done. But she went on with Eddie. And Eddie lived in like this trailer house. I'm just saying, Eddie lived with his dad. And his dad was like at work at the time. So when he get off at school, his dad be at work. So Eddie really be there by himself. He really be there by himself, and his dad be at work. And his dad's other family sometimes be coming over there. Eddie just lives with his dad. All I can say is that his childhood have always been complicated and dysfunctional. He always went through problems in his life, and it plays part in his behavior, his strange behavior at school. So he fixes a cold glass of fruit punch for himself and Malika, and then he wanted to, cheer with her, like cheers, like he said cheers, like hit his glass against hers, and she like thank you, and had took a sip from it, and he had gave her a tour around his house. He had gave her a tour around his house, showing her different pictures that he had on the wall of people in his family. And he was like, this is so-and-so. And Malika was like, okay. And then he ended up asking her, like, you want to go to my bedroom? I want to show you all of my baseball cards collection. He had, like, this trunk, like this chest, with a lot of baseball cards. Some baseball cards that is worth money. And Malika was like, yeah, sure. Because Malika was into baseball. She didn't play baseball, but she was into it because Samuel, back in the days when he was younger, her grandfather, he played baseball. And he knew about folks that played in the Negro League and stuff. And if you don't know about the Negro League, like all black baseball team way back in the days, like probably in the 1930s and 40s and stuff like that. But like Samuel knew all about that. He was a baseball fanatic, and he taught his granddaughter about it. He told his granddaughter about all the stories about baseball. So Malik, and he also, of course, Maurice was raised up knowing about baseball, and Maurice played a little baseball, but not that, great like that. But so Malika was raised into a family that knew a little something about baseball. So she was interested in looking at these cards that Eddie had in his chest, and he showed her all these different cards and handed it to her. She was like, wow, like was just staring at the cards with him. And then he ended up showing like off this trophy that he had gotten. But it was like a trophy that everyone, I guess, had win. I guess it was like one of them days where it was like a trophy that he had gotten for playing in baseball, like when he was like on like a team when he was like much smaller. I would say like around the age of 7 or 8. Eddie is like 14 years old now, but he was like 7 or 8 when he had won that trophy, when he had played like on a baseball team. And Malika was looking at it like, wow, that's nice. And Eddie was just showing her everything in his room. And when Malika had sat there with him for a little while, she had looked at the time on her watch, and she was like, well, I got to go. It was nice talking to you. And Eddie had ended up jumping up real fast, like, hey, well, wait, why you leaving so early? Like, why you on the rush? And Malika was like, well, I got to get home, Eddie. I would like to sit here much longer and talk with you. It was really nice to meet you and everything. I'm sorry that you can't find your dog, but I got to head home. And Eddie ended up grabbing her wrist, which creeped Malika out. He was like, but I wanted you to stay here longer with me. And Malika was like, Eddie, I got to go. And then like she snatched her wrist away. When she tried to leave, tell me why this boy jumped up and locked it up his door real quickly. The door to his bedroom real quickly. He locked his bedroom door. And Malika was like, Eddie, what are you doing? Unlock the door so I can leave out. And Eddie was like, Malika, can I at least just get a hug before you go? And then she was like, a hug? Like, what you want a hug for? Like, no, that sounds creepy. And Eddie was like, how is a hug creepy? A hug is an innocent thing. All I want is a hug. All I ever did was wanted to hug you. That creeped Malika out when he said that. So she thinking in her mind, like, okay, this boy likes me. He got a crush on me. I'm going to just go ahead and give him a hug so I can get the heck up out of here. She gave him a hug. Tell me why when she gave him a hug, he grabbed her tightly up in his arms and tried to kiss her. And when he tried to kiss her, and she like, ugh, Eddie, get off of me. Eddie would not let her go. It escalated. Things got more creepier. Things got more scarier for Malika. All I can say is that she was trapped in that bedroom with Eddie for about like a whole hour. Yes, a whole hour. And it was like close to nighttime. All I can say is Eddie did something horrible to her. He actually assaulted her. And this shook Malika up to the core. Nothing like this ever happened to her. And it was something that she did not want to share with her father, because she knew that her father, what he is capable of doing to a little boy like Eddie. She knew that her father will literally break, viewer discretion is advised, he will break Eddie in half. Just like any concerned father or concerned parent would do. Or just take it to justice, make sure that Eddie's little tail get in trouble. But Malika wanted to keep it to herself. She was scared because after he had did that to her, he also had, threatened to do some bodily harm to her. He had threatened to harm her, her. If she even think about babbling her mouth to anybody about it, even her friends, because he told her, like, you better not tell your friends neither. Because he know who her friends were. Because he seen her talk it to them, Vanice and them. So she didn't tell her friends about it. She didn't tell her dad about it. The only one who could peep something had happened to her was no other person but Cynthia. Well, one day, Malika got quiet, stayed quiet. Malika did not show up to school because she was, feeling under the weather. This assault that had happened to her, it had left her feeling sick to the stomach a lot. She felt sick to the stomach. She definitely did not want to eat anything that they had for dinner. And Maurice thought that something was wrong. But Cynthia knew exactly what was wrong with Malika. She walked into Malika's room and had brought, a plate of cookies. A plate of warm cookies that she had baked. And she had sat it on Malika's nightstand. And Malika was she ended up walking in there and catching Malika crying while wrapped up in her covers. And she had sat the plate of cookies down, and she was like, what's wrong? What happened? She's like, it's okay, you can tell me. And all Malika said while crying, I told him to stop. Viewer's discretion is advised. Like I told him to stop, and that's when Cynthia had laid on the bed like a mother would. She laid on the bed and scooped it Malika up in her arms and held Malika and rubbed at her head like, there, it's okay. And then she'll like, it was a boy from my school, and I don't want you to tell daddy about this. And then Cynthia like, okay, your secret is with me. And like, your secret is with me. But Cynthia, after a while, ended up telling Maurice about it. Maurice was incensed about it. Like, he was mad. He wanted to find his little boy, and like I said earlier, break this boy in half. But Malika begged him not to. Like, no, daddy, no. I don't want that to happen. I don't want him to find out that I told. And Maurice was like, you my daughter. You think that I'll just let this slide, that this had happened to you? But Malika begged her father, like, no, I don't want, anything to happen. I don't want him to find out about it. But Maurice ended up going to the school and telling about what this boy had did to his daughter after school. And once Eddie arrived at school, he had to face consequences. He ended up getting suspended for school. That's the only thing that had happened to him. And it's all because Malika begged her father to not, take further with it. Like, not to go further with it. But that changed it, Malika. She was wearing less makeup. She did not want to wear makeup like that no more. She did not even want to look at herself in the mirror. She didn't even not want to go back to school. But, Maurice, she had her father and Cynthia by her side to comfort her. And she also had Samuel by her side and Ethel too, her grandparents. She had all of them by her side to comfort her and let her know that they is right by her side and they would never let anyone hurt her again. And there was one day where her friends came by to check on her. And Malika was not in the mood to talk to her friends. So Cynthia told them in the nicest way, like, guys, Malika is not ready to come outside. She's still laying in the bed. And Vanice was like, well, okay then, like, we'll come by some other time when she, feels like talking to us. We ain't gonna bother with her. They end up finding out what had happened to Malika. That devastated them. And they knew who the heck Eddie was, so they were thinking like, oh my God, I can't believe he'll do something like that. What a creep. What a monster. That's what Vanice and them was saying. And Terrell was thinking in his mind like, man, I hope he got in trouble for that crap. But Eddie did not get in trouble. He basically got a slap on the wrist with that suspension. But once things had came back together, what had made Malika started wearing makeup again, and and having confidence in herself and started putting a smile on her face, was that she started developing a closeness with Cynthia. And her and Cynthia, she ended up finding out that her and Cynthia had something in common. Cynthia lost her mother. And also, Cynthia also have been actually assaulted when she was younger. So the same thing happened to her years back. She did not want to tell anybody either. And she said she still did not tell anybody. To that very day. She kept it right on with her to the age that she's at now. And that shocked Malika. She was like, wow, I did not know that. So her and Cynthia had something in common. And she ended up growing a closeness with Cynthia. Before leaving out for school, she would eat Cynthia's breakfast. And she would also tell Cynthia good morning. And that warmed Cynthia's heart. And that made Maurice happy too. He's seen a change in his daughter. But she started wearing less makeup though. And her friends was waiting at the door. They spoke to Cynthia and Maurice like, hey, how you doing? Hey, Mr. Brown. Hey, Cynthia. And Cynthia like, hey, babies. And Malika was like, okay, y'all, I got to go. Goodbye, Cynthia. Cynthia like, have a great day at school, Malika. Malika left with her friends. She was back to normal, but she still would think about the assault sometimes. And when she think about it, she would just go quiet and won't say anything else to her friends. And her friends knew that. Her friends knew that something like that had traumatized her. But it was after school when they all three of them had, Vanice and Terrell had talked it Malika had talked to Malika to going to a baseball game with them. It was like an after school baseball game. Malika did not want to go with them. She wanted to go straight home after school. But they were like, please come with us. We're going to have fun together. You ain't got to worry about seeing that creep. You know, you'll be with us. We ain't going to let nobody hurt you. You know, you'll be right by our side. And Malika was like, fine. You know, I'll go with you. Malika ended up going, and they was standing. They did not sit on the bleachers with everybody else. The bleachers were filled up with a lot of people already. They had stood like behind this fence with like some other kids, like watching, you know, the team from their school go at it with like another team from another school. And the star of this baseball team that played for their school, the star of this team, his name was Rudolph White. His name was Rudolph White, and it was Rudolph White right along with Colester Farmer. They was like the two main stars of this baseball team. They both like was the best players on the baseball team, but it was mainly Rudolph White. Like they looked at him like a future Jackie Robinson or something. But he was small. He was like around 14 years of age, the same age as every other student out there. And, you know, everybody was just cheering that team on. Everybody on the bleachers. And Rudolph White, he made plenty of home runs for the team. Like I said, he was one of the best players. And he made a home run on that day. And everybody was standing behind the fence watching him. And Malika was just watching quietly while holding on, while having her fingers, you know, like fingers inside like the circles inside the fence area. She was just staring at this boy play the baseball. And Terrell was telling Vanice, like, man, that boy could play, man. He could play. And Vanice was like, yes, woohoo, let's go, team. I didn't have a name for the team, but like, let's go, woohoo. Cheer to the team of my school. And that team, of course, won. The team that were playing for their school. That team won with Rudolph White. Everybody was happy. Everybody was cheering. One of the players they had, you know, everybody was just, every player on the team was just surrounding Rudolph White. Somebody, I think the coach, had pitted up Rudolph White, sat him on his neck, and Rudolph was just sitting on top of the coach's neck, like, you know, everybody was just cheering him on. And Malika was like just watching all of this happen around her and was kind of smiling, but she was just ready to go. She did not want to stick around much longer. And Vanice ended up calling Rudolph over by the fence because she knew him personally. Her and Terrell did. They would speak to him. You know, sometimes would hang out with him and other, you know, kids and stuff. And then Vanice was like, hey, Rudolph, over here. And he had ended up, after speaking with a few other of his players, he ended up walking over by the fence and he was like, what's up, y'all? And Vanice was like, oh my God, like you could play, you was one of the best players and best players and da 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 da. And Rudolph was like, thanks. Hey, well, you know, they were like, hey, you guys is coming to the pizza parlor with us because, you know, every team has a celebration time, right? So his team, they were planning on going to the pizza parlor to eat pizza. And Vanice was like, oh, yeah. I want to introduce you to my friend Malika. Malika, this is Rudolph White. Rudolph, this is my friend Malika. And then Rudolph was like, it's nice to meet you, Malika. And Malika was like, hey. And Rudolph looked at Vanice like, your friend don't really speak much, do she? And then Vanice was like, that's how she is. And then he's like, well, is she coming to the pizza parlor with the rest of us? And then Vanice said, sure she is, ain't you? And Malika like, no, I don't want to go to no pizza parlor. And Rudolph said, you sure? I really would like for you to come. And Malika was like, no, I'm fine. And what was special about Rudolph meeting Malika is that after a while, Malika had ended up growing an interest in Rudolph romantically. Just like Rudolph was growing an interest with Malika romantically. And it all had to do with Vanice. Vanice was telling more about her friend to Rudolph. And Rudolph had started growing an interest in Malika. And this definitely had brought a smile on Malika's face and had made her started acting completely like her normal self. When her and Rudolph started becoming a couple, and she did started going to like the after school celebrations, like after their team win a game, they'll go somewhere celebrate. She would go off with them because she started, going with Rudolph, and he was just the type of boy that would sweep Malika up off her feet. Everything in her mind was just all about her and Rudolph, and her father and them at home, they did not know that Malika was like in a relationship with this boy, especially Maurice. He did not know about his daughter's relationship with this boy at school. But Cynthia ended up finding the notebook, and it had like Malika's name plus sign and Rudolph's name, and she ended up showing it to Maurice. And Maurice confronted Malika like, "Who's this Rudolph boy? Like you got a boyfriend and I'm sitting back not knowing about it. Like, I'm your father. Like, you better not have a boyfriend." And Cynthia like, "Oh, why don't you put Maurice, why don't you put a sock in it? The girl is in love. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a little puppy love." But Malika had let her father and Cynthia and her grandfather and Ethel know that it was not just puppy love. It was real love between her and Rudolph. She loved this boy, and this boy loved her. They loved each other like older folks did. Like, they had real romance between each other, even though they was really young. And one day, Rudolph ended up inviting Malika over to his house. And what's different about Rudolph's life, a little snippet about his life, is that both of his parents are divorced. His mother, Raquel, had a divorce from his father. I don't have a name for his father, but they both are divorced. And his father is living way in Seattle, while his mother is living in Indiana raising him. And his mother, just like with Malika, her father stayed busy with his job. Raquel stayed busy with her job, which means that she does not have time to go to her son's games and watch him play. That be hurting Rudolph. He be wanting his mother to show up to his games and watch him play, but she just not have the time to like sit at his games, like make up a day like to watch her son play the games, and that be hurting him. But he do be having his coach and his friends right there, right along with him to support him, and now he has his girlfriend, to support him, Malika. He invited her to his room. And Rudolph had a lot of trophies set up, like way more than Eddie. He had a lot of trophies and stuff set up, and he also showed off his bat. And Malika was like saying, like, "Can you teach me how to hold a bat?" And Rudolph placed it in her hand, like, "Yeah, sure. This is how you hold it, and this is how you swing." And as he was teaching her, Malika ended up turning around, looking at him in the face, and he stared back at Malika, and the two of them, they kissed. Yeah, it was romantic. They had kissed like a couple did. And Raquel ended up walking in on Malika and Rudolph kissing. And that scared Malika. She was scared and wanted it to jump up and leave because she thought she was in trouble. But Rudolph let her know, like, "It's cool. I already told my mother about you." And Raquel like, "You must be Malika." And she shook Malika's hand. She like, "Hey." And then, but Malika ended up packing up her things and leaving. But Rudolph, letting her know, like, "Well, will I see you some other time?" And Malika like, "Yeah, you'll see me some other time." And they both kissed again, and she left. So she was really head over heels in love with this boy, and he was in love with her. And one day, it was her and Vanice ended up dating Calester. Calester was one of Rudolph's friends. She ended up started dating Calester. And so it was Calester and Vanice and Rudolph and Malika. They were all at the park together. And Malika has sat with Rudolph underneath the tree right by each other, and they kissed and talked it and stuff. And Malika had ended up telling some about the traumatic thing that had happened to her between her and Eddie. And Rudolph knew who the heck Eddie was. But before she had spilled out and told this to her boyfriend, Rudolph ended up telling Malika that an important game was coming up, and that he would love for her to be there to watch him play. And Malika was like, yeah, sure, of course I'll be there, yeah, sure, of course I'll be there. Like, you the love of my life, I'll be there to support you. And they were like, well, good, because I need you there, my mother, she never shows up, and that's bummy, that's messed up. And Malika would let them know, like, well, everything will be okay, I'll be there right there in the front row cheering you on. And then Malika, everything ended up growing serious. So, like, everything ended up growing serious. So that means, like, serious music, how it be in the movies and stuff, serious everything. And Malika ended up spilling out what had happened to her between her and Eddie. And Rudolph knew who the heck Eddie was. He was like, yeah, I know that guy. Like, he really did that? And Malika was like, yeah. And then, like, she ended up getting emotional, just like any person or victim would do. She ended up getting emotional. She ended up breaking down into tears. But Vanice and Calester was away. They was not around hearing none of this. She was telling this to Rudolph. It was just her and Rudolph. She didn't tell him under the tree either. She ended up walking somewhere farther, where Vanice and the rest of them wouldn't hear them. She ended up walking somewhere farther, like by a lake. And she sat there and told him while shedding tears. And Rudolph was like, Rudolph had on his mind, like, oh, I'm going to hurt him. Oh, yeah, when I see him, it's on. Like, that's what Rudolph had in his mind. And he wrapped his arms around her neck, say anything, and then like, I'm sorry about that happening to you. He kissed her on the cheek. And then Malika was like, just promise me that you won't confront him or do anything crazy, because she's seen that she's seen Rudolph's whole expression change. Like, it bothered him, it angered him. Like, there's something like that happened to his girlfriend, and a boy who he knows very well did it to him. A boy that was in one of his classes and that used to be on his baseball team. Yes, Eddie used to be on the baseball team, but he got kicked off. He got kicked off because he was one of the worst players. And nobody could get along with him, especially Rudolph. Nobody could get along with him. They thought of him as a weirdo, like everybody else. They thought of him as a weirdo, like everybody else. So, yeah, Eddie got kicked off of the team. And he also couldn't keep his grades up like that. So, yeah, he got kicked off the team. He used to be on the same team with Rudolph and the rest of them. So, Rudolph was like, yeah, okay, I know who he is. If I see him, it's on. And that's what ended up happening. It was like on like it was like on a day where it was like it was like an important game day for Rudolph's baseball team and another baseball team that they had to play for, another school in the area of Indiana. And this was an important game for Rudolph. And he was looking in the crowd. He was looking up at the bleachers. And he did not see Malika in sight. And the reason why is Malika did not show up on that day. She did not show up on that day. She spent that day with her grandfather for some reason. She wanted to spend time with her granddaddy, her Grandpa Blue. Her Grandpa Blue was fishing on this day. He was fishing, and it was him and her. He took her fishing and told her more stories about, the baseball and about his childhood and etc. Like I said, she liked to spend time with her grandpa too. Nothing can change their, relationship, grandfather and granddaughter. So on that day when Rudolph didn't see her in sight, that bothered him. But, he strutted off like maybe she couldn't show up. But he did not know that Eddie was also in that crowd of people watching that team play against another team. And he just could not concentrate. He was thinking about how his mother was not there to watch him play. Malika was not there to watch him play. And also, his father was far off living in Seattle, so he barely sees his father like that. His father also married another woman and had another child in Seattle, and that really have been bothering Rudolph for years. That had been bothering him about that. So, all of that was just building up on him. So he was like, and like grabbing his baseball bat, ready to play. He never had that much pressure on him. So he started missing hitting the ball. And he never missed hitting the ball. Like I said, he was one of the best players. So the coach knew that something was off. And right when, like when they pulled a player out temporarily and let somebody else, like, take the place of that player, I guess they do that in baseball. Don't know much about sports. But, like, the coach pulled Rudolph to the side temporarily, like, keep your head focused on the game. You're all right. Everything is all right with you today? And Rudolph like, yeah, everything's fine. But really, he just had a lot of pressure on him. So when it was time for him to step in and, like, hit the ball, it was time for him to, like, hit the ball. He headed it successfully. He headed it and took off running. And yes, his team ended up winning that game, but he still was, upset. He still was upset, about Malika not showing up and not seeing his mother, like neither one of his parents there for him, just his friends and his coach. And right in the crowd when everyone was cheering, Rudolph was still looking around to see if Malika would show up. And he ended up laying eyes on Eddie, which he mistakenly did. When he laid eyes on Eddie, he was like the Terminator. He went straight for Eddie. Eddie was not paying attention. He was talking to some other boy. But Rudolph laid eyes on him some other place. And once Rudolph laid eyes on him, he went straight where Eddie was. And it was Pound Town. And I mean Pound Town. He dived right on top of Eddie and beat him down to a bloody pulp. Like, beat him down. Viewer's description is advised. He went on top of Eddie and was just pounding him. And the rest of the players on his team tried to pull him off of Eddie. He was snatching away and was just locked on Eddie. Like two dogs locked on each other. Eddie could not handle Rudolph's fists. Rudolph had a lot of anger in him and was just beating the living crap out of Eddie. Like, very bloody fight. He was just beating the crap out of Eddie. That's all I can say. And, the coach ended up pulling Rudolph off. And he was holding on to Rudolph and carrying him off somewhere. And we were like, get off of me. Like, we're just yelling and cussing, like, get off of me. And it was like yelling at the coach. And then he started hitting back and pulling back from the coach. And then the coach was like telling him, like, if you don't calm down, you off of the team. Like, we're telling him that. And Rudolph was just saying he don't care. Like, he was just going off. He did not care. Like, he was just sick of a lot of things. And that's when the coach ended up, like, cutting him off of the team, like, letting him know that he got to go. And once the coach did that, Rudolph just took his bat, went somewhere, and he ended up hitting his bat against, like, a tree branch. He ended up hitting his bat and smashing it. He ended up hitting his back against the tree, like, argh! And it, like, broke, shattered, and he only had, like, half of a bat left and walked it straight home. But he had a lot of anger sitting up inside him. And when he arrived at home, he sat back in his bed, still angry, and we were quiet. And he was just staring at the bat. And the reason why he was staring at that bat so deeply and regretting what he had did, he broke his bat, is because he got that bat when his parents were married. His parents were still married when he had gotten that bat. So it hurted him that he broke that bat out of anger. And, like, he was thinking to himself, like, that bat had brought him luck. He felt like that bat had some type of luck attached to it, too. That's what Rudolph believed, his 14-year-old mind. He believed that it was some type of luck attached to that bat because his parents were married when he got that bat. And, he held on to that bat when his parents got a divorce. So it hurted him that he ended up breaking his bat out of anger. And he was still angry that Malika didn't show up to the game or none of that. But, he did not feel like talking to his mother. And his mother, had to run another errand like, well, I'll talk to you later, son, just try to stay calm. And Rudolph was just staring at her and looked it back down at the broken bat that he had in his lap. And after a while, Malika ended up showing up. She ended up showing up. And She ended up showing up around the time when Raquel was leaving out, had to run errands. She's like, oh, hey, Malika. And she was like, Rudolph is up in his room, I'll be right back. And Malika was like, oh, okay. And she ended up showing up and ended up peeping her head in his room. Rudolph glanced it up and then stared it back down. And then she was like, hey, Rudolph. And instead of saying, hey, back, Rudolph said back, like, where were you? And then she was like, I was with my grandfather. And then he was like, I thought you said that you would show up to the game. I didn't see you nowhere out there. And then she was like, what? I was spending time with my grandfather. I'm sorry. And then she was like, what happened to your back? And they were like, I broke it. And then she was like, why? And they were like, that's not important. What's important is that you were supposed to be there for me. You were supposed to be supporting me. And I ain't see you nowhere in sight. And then she also seen that his knuckles were kind of bruised up. And then she was like, why is your back broken? And what happened to your hand? And then he snatched his hand away. And then she was like, I gave Eddie what he deserved. And then she was like, you did it. And they were like, yeah, I did. And then you should have been there. You should have been supporting me. But no, I didn't see your face in sight. You lied to me. And then he also said, like, you was a sorry girlfriend. He started saying that. And then she was like, Rudolph, you don't say that to me. Like, you don't know me like that. Like, don't be saying that I'm doing the best that I can. I was spending time with my granddaddy. I love my grandfather. So the two of them started going back and forth. And then she also told Rudolph that he should have never did that to Eddie. Like, he should have never, attacked Eddie like that and got kicked off of the team. And then that's when Rudolph was thinking in his mind, like, Malika is turning against him. And they're like, well, whose side did you on? He hurted you. Did you forget in that? Did that assault messed up your mind or something like that? Like, he was telling her that. And that's when Malika was like, I don't have to take this. I got to go. And when she was about to leave and grab her purse, like, no, this conversation is not over. He ended up grabbing her arm and snatching her back up where he was. Like, Rudolph, let go of me. Are you crazy? She started having flashbacks of what Eddie did. So that's where Rudolph was like, no, this conversation is not over. Like, you was my girlfriend. You supposed to listen to me. Sounded very demanding. So him and Malika were going back and forth to the point where Rudolph just hauled off and smacked Malika in the face. And he smacked her so hard that Malika fell against his door and she held his face. And that shocked Rudolph. He came back to his senses and realized what he did. And they were like, oh. And then Malika, she broke down and cried, grabbed up her purse. And they're like, Malika, wait. She grabbed up her purse and left out the door. And she left and well, correction. Thinking back to how I did the story, he didn't slap Malika, he punched her. Because Malika had ended up showing up back home. And it was like the very next day, she had a black eye. She got out the shower. She got out the shower in the bathroom and ended up looking in the mirror and seeing the black eye. Cynthia ended up stepping in like, well, I made some breakfast. What happened to your eye? And when she said that, Maurice ended up coming up like, well, I got to go to work. Like, what in the world happened to your eye? Like, they both had ended up seeing like the black mark under her eye. And Malika like, it's nothing. I heard it myself in PE. She lied. And Malika and Maurice says, you tell me what happened right now. Did some boy did this to you? Did that little boyfriend of yours did it to you? And Malika was like, but she lied. She was scared to tell her father. And Cynthia like, I'll have a talk with her. And Maurice like, no, I want to know who gave my daughter this black eye. But Malika did end up telling her grandfather and her father, including Cynthia as well, that Rudolph did lose his temper. My thing glitched. That Rudolph did lose his temper and hit her. And that angered Maurice Hill like, oh heck no. No, this is unacceptable. Where the boy live at? Where he live at? So I could confront his tail. He don't put his hands on you. He don't put his hands on my daughter. And Samuel was thinking the same thing, like, oh, he touched my granddaughter? Well, I'm going to put my foot up his ass. That's what Samuel was saying. So Maurice ended up going to Raquel's house. Raquel is Rudolph's mother. And he ended up knocking on the door. And Raquel opened up the door. She was home that day. She was like, can I help you? And then she'll like, where's the little boy at that goes with my daughter? And they're like, oh, you must be Malika's father. And they're like, yeah, where is he at? I need to talk to him. And then she'll like, Rudolph, just a minute. He's going to come down. And Rudolph, his bedroom was upstairs. He was coming down like, yeah, what is it, Mom? And then she'll like, it's someone here to see you, Malika's father. Rudolph knew exactly why Malika's father was there. And so, as soon as he got outside, Malika's father ended up grabbing, well, not Malika's father, Malika's grandfather, Samuel, ended up grabbing the side of Rudolph's shirt. And they both ended up pulling him to the side of the house. And Maurice like, oh, so you touched my daughter? You gave her a black eye? And Rudolph like, I know, I'm sorry. I did not mean to do it. I lost my temper. I did not mean to hit her. Now, I love Malika. It shocked me too. I didn't mean it. Like, he was sincerely apologizing for what he did to Malika. And Maurice, he was like looking down like, should I not do this little boy in? But Samuel was like, well, the boy is sorry. He said he apologized. He made a mistake. We all make mistakes in life. And they were like, is Malika all right? Is there, I'm able to talk to her again? And Maurice said, like, I think it's best for y'all to stay separated for a little while till you're able to talk again. And after some time, when Malika was staying away from Rudolph, it would kind of make her fall into depression a little bit. She was used to being close to him. But after a while, Rudolph ended up surprising Malika because he ended up showing up at the front door of her grandparents' house. He ended up showing up with some flowers for her. And he also had some flowers for Cynthia. And he ended up showing up there to eat dinner with them. And that made Malika happy. She loved it that when her boyfriend went there, eating dinner with the rest of them. And Rudolph told more about himself to Malika's father and them. Like, they all just had a great dinner time. And before Rudolph had left, at home, everybody just sat on the porch and talked it at nighttime, did sweet tea and everything. Like, everyone was just having a great time together. And the very next day, just like Rudolph had a surprise visit. Rudolph was a surprise visit to his girlfriend. Rudolph ended up getting a surprise visit himself. And that surprise visit was his father. His father ended up coming down from Seattle to see him. His father really wanted Rudolph to come live with him in Seattle. Rudolph was not going for it. Rudolph's father ended up showing up at the door, and him and Raquel, they said a few words to each other. Raquel spoke to his wife, his father's wife. His father's wife's name is Veronica, and she ended up speaking to her. It wasn't no bad blood between the two. And Veronica ended up meeting Rudolph for the first time. Oh my God, your father told me a lot about you. He showed me baby pictures of you and everything. And Rudolph was like, yeah, nice to see you too. And ended up meeting Veronica's daughter as well. They had like a daughter together, her and Rudolph's father. So that's basically Rudolph's sister. They both had met, and Rudolph's father was like, son, I want you to come live with me in Seattle. Would you like to do that? And Rudolph was like, look, Pops, I don't know anything about Seattle, and Seattle don't know anything about me. I'd rather stay here where my mother is at. That's what Rudolph had said. And Raquel was thinking it was a good idea. Like, Rudolph, maybe you should, go to Seattle. You never been to Seattle. It would be really nice for you and your father to bond and, live with each other. And Rudolph's like, Mom, I do not want to go to Seattle. I want to stay down here in Indiana where my friends is at. I don't know anything about Seattle. Why I look like going all the way up there? And that's when the father took his word, like, okay, if you want to stay down here with your mother, that's fine. And they were like, oh, and I got a surprise for you. Your mother told me about your baseball bat being broken. He ended up surprising Rudolph with another bat, but this time it was a steel bat. But Rudolph wasn't feeling his bat. He was holding like, thanks, Dad. That's nice. And he was like, yeah, that's one that I had spent some money on, so you take care of it. He had gave Rudolph this silver bat that he could play, like when he get back on the baseball team. But and Rudolph ended up getting back on the baseball team. It's like he would cut off for some time, but He ended up talking to the coach, apologizing for how his behavior was. The coach ended up letting him back on. And it was around like one day where Rudolph decided to practice with his friend Colester. The two of them was practicing like in a regular baseball field somewhere. But today, on this day, it was really, really hot on this day. Like the sun was just sitting on top of people as soon as you step outside. And while they practiced for some time, Colester was like, "You want to go somewhere and get something to drink? Take a break." And Rudolph like, "No, I don't want to take no breaks. I want to continue to practice." Rudolph did not want to take no breaks. He wanted to practice till he got better at what he was doing. But the more he practiced, the hotter it got. And once he was about to take another swing with his new bat. Hold on. I had to pause it a little loud. But as soon as he was about to take another swing with his bat, he glanced it up at the sun. And he collapsed. Yes, sadly, Rudolph collapsed. The heat, well, it wasn't really the heat that made him collapse. He just collapsed out of nowhere. Colester ran over like, "Rudolph!" He ran off. Rudolph was on the ground. He was out. With his eyes rolled to the back of his head, he was out. And Colester has somehow had to pick up his friend and carry off his friend, to Raquel's house. And Raquel had made sure to get her son to the hospital to see what was wrong with him. And coming to find out, Rudolph, at 14 years old, had a failing heart. He had a failing heart. Heart was barely pumping any blood anymore. Like his heart was barely working anymore. And just a sad moment that he out of nowhere, fell ill. He was seemed like he was in the best shape of his life. Seemed like he was in the best shape at 14 years old, doing great for himself, very athletic, full of energy, and out of nowhere, he has a failing heart. That's how bad your health can decline. And Malika found out about it. Of course, she went to the hospital, and she was in tears. She was in tears when she showed up to the hospital, and she walked in the hospital, and seeing Rudolph hooked up the IVs, but he was still, woke. He was still woke, but pretty weak. He was still woke, but pretty weak. And he spoke to Malika. Malika held his hand, kissed his hand and stuff, and she laid her head on his chest when everybody else left out the room. It was just her and him in there, and she was like, "Rudolph, I'll give my heart to you. I'll give my heart to you. I love you." And then she was in tears. And Rudolph ended up lifting his hand up, wiping the tears from her eye. And she was like, "I promise, I'll write you every day. I'll send letters to you, so you can read them. I just hope that you're able to read them." And Rudolph said, "I promise I'll read every letter that you send to me." Because she just could not stand in that room and see him hooked up to IV. She would rather just send him letters. She would rather send letters to him for him to read the letters. So that's what she started to do, Malika. And she sent him letters every day. Every day, every single day, Raquel would read the letters to him, or either he'll read the letters himself. And but sadly, one day, it was on a Saturday, early Saturday morning. The machine went beep. Rudolph White did not make it. Rudolph White passed away peacefully in the bed. It broke his mother's heart. That was her only son by the man that she used to be married to. And that crushed it, Malika. She loved it, huh? She cried like a baby for some days. But it's one day where she had pulled herself together, and she had pulled herself together. That hurted a lot of them at school. Rudolph was pretty popular, so the whole baseball team, everybody was just honoring him one day. They honored him one day, for his death. They honored him, the whole team. Everybody, the whole school, they had a moment of silence one day for him because he passed away. And yeah, that hurted everybody. It hurted Malika, that hurted his mother and everybody. But life goes on, you know, like what everyone says. And after a while, Maurice and Cynthia, they end up having their wedding. And they end up getting married, and Malika thought it was a beautiful thing. But she was still sad, a little bit sad about Rudolph. And because in her mind, you know, like every young person who is in love, they be thinking in their mind, you know, about like stuff in the future, like how long they'll stay with that person, and like will they have a future with that person. She was actually thinking that with Rudolph, like the two of them could have had been together all the way up to adult years and could have had a future, but he ended up passing away from, you know, a heart problem. And Cynthia and her father, they like she ended up having a good time with them, you know, after the wedding. It was a nice wedding that Cynthia and Malika's father had. It was a beautiful wedding. Everyone was there, family and all. Some of Cynthia's family was there. Cynthia also had a sister. She had a sister as well as aunts and everyone who showed up there for her wedding. And it the story in a child's heart had ended with Cynthia had seen the apparition of Malika's mother, the apparition of Michelle. Because not only was Malika has seen her, Cynthia has seen her. It was one day when Cynthia was in the kitchen washing up the dishes and everything, and she had heard a knock on the back door, you know, on the back door window. And she was like, just a minute. She was wiping her hands with the dish rag, and she ended up stopping by the door, and she ended up stopping and was looking, froze. And the reason why she was froze shocked is because she seen Michelle peeping in like this through the window, and she waved it at Cynthia and left away from the door. And it's that shot that Cynthia, she was like, and she thought about how Malika had told that sometimes she see her mother, and she saw Michelle for herself. And that's basically the end of In a Child's Heart. And if you stay towards the end, I hope you like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you haven't. If you're new here, once again, welcome to my channel. It's very nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to have you drop by my channel. And thanks for the support. I hope you all have a great day and drive safely out there. Please love one another, treat everyone with respect. Don't give up on life. There's hope around the corner. I always know that. And if God's will, I'll be doing a video where I'll be trying some food that my sister had made. And thanks for making it to the end. Goodbye. God bless you all. Virtual hugs. Much love to you. Goodbye.